this is a forum for individuals who are interested in what is happening in the world, whether it be the world of politics, entertainment, pop culture, what have you, or just news altogether, but don't necessarily understand what's happening. So the title of this video is the Brexit agreement that Boris Johnson and the EU agreed late last night. And I'm going to tell you about this deal and why I support it and why I feel that the British people should support it as well. Now, for those of you who are new to Arana Nation, let me just say that I supported Brexit. I'm a huge Brexiteer. I did not support Theresa May's deal. I'll tell you why. I'll explain all of that. But before you even say anything, you listen to me now. Because, this is a forum for where you're going to get facts. You're going to get them real. You're going to get them straight. You're not going to get any opportunistic. I don't benefit from anything the Brits do. I don't give a damn. I'm not even a British person. I don't understand. I'm just a person who leads people through the path of nationalism, to the path of self-pride, to the path of God, to the path of all of that. And rather than listening to Nigel Farage or Theresa May or Nicola Sturgeon or Joe Swinson, Jeremy Corbyn, all of those people, you come to me and I'll give you what is to be said based on the path of nationalism. They will just give you their opportunistic, self-serving view. But Arana Nation will give you the information through facts and will lead you, hopefully, through the path of understanding. Now, the reason I support this deal is simply because this is, first of all, I actually was hoping for no deal. And now people say, oh, this is going to be such a big problem. No deal. UK, EU, the UK leaves without a deal. They say it's going to be a bunch of problems. I'm saying that's not necessarily true. We will get into that. If the UK happens to leave without a deal, we'll get into how the UK can get out of any problems that a no deal would cause. Problems. But we all know that the United Kingdom voted to leave the EU a few years ago. And the only thing that's keeping them in the EU now is because they haven't come up, the UK and the EU haven't come up with a plan on how to leave where there would be economic cooperation, meaning they would leave trading, the UK would have the EU as a trading partner. Personally, I would have left without a deal a long time ago, and we'll talk about that. But that is where the British politicians and the big money people, all kind of money people in London and England, they want to make sure their assets are safe. Rothschilds and all those kind of murderous criminal people. That's another topic. But that's what they're concerned about. They want that trading relationship. They've accepted that we're leaving the EU, but they want that trading relationship. But that's what's keeping them. Theresa May's deal was a deal that involved something called the backstop. Now, the backstop, many people don't know what that means, or the Irish backstop. And I will tell you, the backstop is a familiar name. Many people know it. But it was a name given to a draft agreement between the UK and the EU that aims to prevent a hard border, meaning for those of you who live in the United States, near the border of Canada or Mexico, when you cross that border, that's a hard border because there's immigration, people questioning you, people digging in your trunk and all that stuff. That could potentially happen because Northern Ireland is a part of the UK. Ireland is a separate nation. They became separated many years ago during Queen Victoria times or whatever. And many people worry that if there was a border, them Irish, they're crazy. Them Irish people, they'll tear the place up. They'll start blowing things up, shooting up people, they will tear up they will start fighting like dogs in the night. And that's how it used to be. And then they had this Good Friday Agreement, which stopped border crossings. But leaving the EU would bring back border crossings. So these people want to make a deal which would prevent that from happening. And Theresa May came up with something called this backstop. And the thing that was really bad about the backstop, though, was that it would say to the UK as a whole, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, that they would have to have a common customs territory with the EU until the solution was delivered to avoid the need for custom controls. So it would almost be like the UK would have to follow a lot of the rules, custom rules, all these type of trading rules with the EU, of the EU. They'd have to follow all those rules, but they wouldn't even be a part of the UK. It's almost like the old Soviet Union when Poland and Ukraine and Belarus and all those places were a part of the Soviet Union. They were a part of this country, but they couldn't vote. They didn't have people in the legislature. They couldn't do any of that. So there was no representation. It would be like being a part of Washington, D.C., taxation without representation. It would be like that. It'd be even worse than that. You'd have to not only tax it, but you'd have to follow a bunch of rules without representation. How can you treat a country like UK like that? A country with Magna Carta, a country with what's that church called? Westminster Abbey, a country with Tower of London, a country with Queen Elizabeth I, a country with British Empire, a country with all sorts of historical grandness. You're treating this country like it's some satellite. Hell no. Theresa, that's treasonous. And they threw Theresa out because of that, the former prime minister. Now Boris Johnson's new deal is, they saying it's similar to Theresa May. A lot of the Nigel Farages are saying that, but it doesn't have the backstop. Now, there are certain rules that Northern Ireland will have to follow. But here's the thing, populists, here's the thing you need to listen to me about. During that Brexit election, the people of Northern Ireland voted against Brexit. 55 to 45, I think it was. But the people of Northern Ireland voted against Brexit. The people of Scotland also voted against Brexit. England and Wales voted for Brexit. And there are more people in England than any part of the UK. And a lot of those people in England outside of London, almost all of them voted for Brexit. So that's how come we have Brexit now. But Northern Ireland voted against Brexit. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't have any sympathy for them. They voted to be in the EU. So if they have to follow the rules of the EU without representation, that's their problem. Now, if the vote had gone another way, that would be a different thing. But brothers, you voted for it. So I'm not bothered with you. I'm not bothered with you one bit. You all voted to be part of it, so that's what you do. If you hadn't voted for it, then I would say, look, we can't accept this deal. Let's just leave it no deal. And that could very well happen because the House of Commons, they could very well vote against this deal because it has to go through them. Just because the UK and the EU agreed on a deal to leave the EU doesn't mean that that deal is set in stone. They have to go to House of Commons, ask Jeremy Corbyn, ask SNP, ask Joe Swinson, ask all these different people, vote for this. And they could very well say no. In fact, the DUP said they're not voting for it. So they could very well say no. And here's the thing. If they do say no, EU has done the UK a favor. They said, if you don't accept this deal, you're out of here. Just leave. It's over. There's no extension. There's nothing. You're gone. There's no deal. And I say, yeah, they meant that. They're thinking they're going to scare the UK. Now, here's what the UK should do if there is no Brexit deal. Here's the thing. The biggest problem that these so-called experts are saying would happen if there was no deal would be in the area of trade. the UK would lose its biggest trading partner, the EU, because they've been trading with them for years and years. But here's the thing that with trade that people don't seem to understand. You don't have to have a bad deal in order to make sure that trade remains operational, even if you have to be a little sneaky. And the Chinese are very good at this, and the UK and most of these countries which are dominated by white folks should start growing spines and do what the Chinese and the Mexicans and all these people do to America before Donald Trump on a daily basis. They cheat so much, and who's going to stop them? There's no police that can arrest the UK. What's going to happen? But here's what you do. First of all, you already have a VAT. So a lot of businesses pay a lot of taxes. So what you do is any business that pays tariff or any of that stuff when they trade from the UK into the EU, you subsidize them with the taxes they already pay. You just give it back to them. Here, I'll just give this back to you. So it's basically free. They're getting their money back. They're not paying any tariff. But you take that tariff from the EU when they ship their things into the UK, and they're going to do it. I mean, they're going to do it. It's inevitable they're going to do it. And in the meantime, your British businesses are exporting, but if there's no imports coming from the EU, then you can rely on your British manufacturing. You can rely on your British farming. You can rely on your British technology. So they're still exporting in a sneaky way. They're being subsidized for any tariff that they have to pay. And then in the meantime, the British people, since there's no exports coming from EU, they're just going to buy British. So that's a double. That's killing two birds with one stone. That's what I would do. The Chinese do that. All the different people do that. Britain should do it if there's no deal. Don't be afraid of no deal. Don't be afraid of no deal. And you'll see how quickly the EU comes crawling back to the UK. So that is why, but I support Boris Johnson's deal. However, I don't care if the MPs in the House of Commons decide to vote against this deal. It has no backstop. So the UK is not going to have to follow one single rule from the EU. Only Northern Ireland will have to follow certain tax rules and VAT rules and trading rules to prevent some border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, because the Irish people are so hot-headed that if there's any border, they're going to tear the place down. They're going to just tear that place up like they were doing in the 60s and in the 70s and in the 80s with the IRA. Tear up that place, rip it up, blow up you think Muslims are bad. White folk think Muslims are bad. You ain't seen nothing when you see a pissed off Irishman. They're worse than Osama bin Laden, ISIS, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi mixed together. They're worse. I don't know what people think. Like, they think the Middle East is bad. Go back in time in the 60s and go to Ireland back in the 60s and the 70s. They're worse. It make Iraq look like a playground. I'm telling you. It was a hellhole. They were tearing up the place. Please. It would make Harlem look like Disney World. It would make Detroit look like Disney World. I mean, you think South Central Los Angeles is bad. You ain't seen nothing yet until you go to Ireland, Northern Ireland, Belfast, and all those places back in the 80s, the 70s, and the 60s. It was violence. That's where the angry Irish stereotype comes from, actually, I think. But that's what that's the information I'm giving you on Boris Johnson's New Deal. If it passes, that's great. This whole Brexit thing is over. If it doesn't pass, there'll be no deal. At least that's what the EU is saying. And I hope they stick to it too. Because the British people should not be afraid of no deal. This is the Arana Nation.